Hey everybody. Friday again, email and coffee with Joy Brooks. Today I'm speaking with Andre Lam I'm sorry. See, I did it.
Yeah,
Andre Lam.
good test.
And yeah, really. And what a way to go. And I was talking a little bit about him, a little bit with him about conflict management. And I just had to bring that online to have it with everyone else. So let's introduce Andre and have him tell everyone a little bit about himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be here. It's Great Friday. I call it gratitude is top of mind for me. So grateful. Myself, I'm a masculine alchemy coach. So what does that mean? I work with alchemical transmutations for my clients. So converting our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions into what we want. So every day, you and I, we're alchemists, whether we know it or not. So I work with men, leading them to embody conscious leadership so they can live a life of meaning and purpose within a community of other men for that support and accountability. Because the whole Lone Ranger, lone wolfing, men being in their heads is a big thing. We're so used to doing it ourselves. So now we're doing it through people, through brotherhood. Brotherhood helps speed up the process of rediscovering my authentic power. Now, there's a journey leading up to that point to get to where I am today, but just wanted to share what I do currently now.
Cool. I do the same thing for and with women. So sometimes you've got to step into a marginalized group to better manage it, and then have them step out themselves individually into the big old world where conflict management. I mean, you can wake up and start having a great day, or you can wake up and start having a bad day. You could feel off. You could have a headache. You could, step into a situation where you thought everything was going well, and maybe you get a little disrespect, or maybe something happens where you perceive something's not going on as you'd like, and it sets you off. It triggers you in some way, and that's conflicts everywhere you go, in the car,
Yep.
At home with loved ones, with children, with work, everywhere you go. It's not always going to be perfect. The old expression, I don't know if you went through it, but, as a kid, I would say to my mom and dad, but that's not fair. And they'd say, yeah, right. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair. And I don't know if I'd want it to be, because then I'd never know if I was excelling or if I was just being mediocre. I want to be the best I can, and to do that, I need a challenge, and that's conflict management.
Yeah, conflict. Most people think of conflict as a fight, right? With another person. There's conflict within, and generally that happens the moment I wake up, even in my dreams. What's the language I use with myself? How much am I fighting myself? Like, I've heard this statement where imagine if everyone had a teleprompter attached to the front of their forehead that read out all the thoughts someone had. We would be categorized as like crazy. We would be in mental asylums, the things that we tell ourselves, right? But we don't usually say that to other people. So yeah, conflict happens all the time. Yeah, so it's not about whether it exists or not. It's not about avoiding it. It's about embracing it. It's about rewriting our story around conflict, right? Life isn't fair. What does that mean? Well, how about I treat life as a learning experience, the good and bad? What is good and bad? It's all judgments anyways, the stories I perceive, right? So then I can rewrite those stories, so then I can start living my own life, right? By my own design versus based on someone else's expectations or based on these stories that were created. So it just really boils down to me being in conflict with who I am truly. Because once I know who I am, I know what my truth, my values, my purpose, my mission, my vision, then I stand firm. I say no to things that don't align with me. I set boundaries, right? And automatically when I set boundaries, people ain't gonna like that, right? We're so used to saying yes, right? Because it's celebrated in the moment. Yay, thank you. But when I say no, it makes it really awkward. I got to deal with that awkward interaction. And automatically, For some people, label me as the bad guy or the bad gal for you, right? Because we're not in agreement. But hey, it doesn't mean that I'm offending you. It's just we're not in alignment this time. And that goes back to me honoring myself versus rather being in conflict. But then when I'm honoring myself, there could be potential conflict with people that aren't in alignment with that, right?
Mm-hmm. That's that's the conversation. That's when people just need to um, be able to own a situation with respect. So, if we're working on a project or I'm working on a project with someone, or even if I'm having a conversation with someone and it goes out into left field. So a meeting goes out into left field, a project starts having some sort of, let's say, scope creep where it's like wildly going out of scope. Anything like that, where you're beginning to feel uncomfortable. It's that trigger that's going to set you off emotionally. It's going to say, this is not where I thought I was going. This is not where I want to go. And you're wanting to shout out, no. Now, sometimes we do. It's like, no, no, no. And then, maybe we need to say, oh, I'm sorry. No, it happens. And perhaps, when you make that response, that's a gut response of no, somebody needs to understand and back up and say, okay, you know what? I hit a button there. Sometimes people want to do that. And now you're exposing a vulnerability and they've got you.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes you're having a conversation, it may appear to be amiable, and it, like I said, it goes off the rails. It's how people handle that. And sometimes angry words are okay between people. They just need to know how to deal with them. So, if you have an angry display, you say a no that's a little more emotional than just, no, I don't think so. How do you set that up in your head as being, oh, this should be, because they need to know that I feel this way, or how do I deal with the situation now moving it forward? Do I have to take a step back? How do you deal with all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, yeah, first it requires me to do the work on myself, right? I can't change someone, I can't fix someone, so I got to take responsibility for me and how I react and respond. Once I do that, once I have a healthy relationship with conflict and knowing how to communicate and listening to be with the person, not listening to respond, right? Listening to be right, then I can have compassion for their whatever displays it is, right? Because then I've done it for myself. So then I then have the fortitude to be able to respond accordingly to someone else and have that empathy for someone. If they're giving me an outburst that could remind me of someone in the past that caused this whole bunch of unpleasant emotions and thoughts. So first I got to do the work on myself. Once I, can be kind to myself, work through that, then it's easy for me to translate it and give that space to other people. Because everybody's at different levels of conflict, right? Conflict management or situational awareness of themselves. But as long as I do the work on myself, I can meet people where they're at, right? I can then, change that energy space to allow things to move versus being in resistance with each other. So I wanted to emphasize the importance of taking responsibility. I always say when I work with my men, we're here together because we're taking responsibility of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Because if we all did that, if every man and woman took responsibility for those three things, we would have paradise on earth right now, right? We would drop the arms. We wouldn't fight each other. Like there wouldn't be wars. We're like, why are we doing this, right? Because why we're doing it now is we think it's outside of ourselves, that this person made me feel this way. It's an offense, right? Well, it's my perception of what they did. And it's a very subtle difference between.
They're not in control of your feelings.
No,
you're in control of your feelings.
But it's
You're
very subtle,
them.
right? To know that difference, because immediately when someone does something, I feel that emotion. So no wonder most people will then blame that person for how they feel. But it's my right between that thing is a judgment of what they did that caused me to feel this way.
It's difficult to It's difficult to bring yourself into a space while you're having conversation with a person or many people, where you're literally in the moment, a moment back, and a moment in front of yourself all at once, and able to say just the right thing. I mean, it's very difficult. I had a situation, feeling perhaps a little bit of disrespect. And I immediately said, please don't I didn't even say please, don't do this. Don't do this. And I don't know how that was taken.
No joy.
And it moved so quickly that we moved on. And I thought to myself, my reaction was as bad as the initial, as the response, as what I was reacting to. So how I reacted and what I reacted to were equally wrong. And no one took a moment to say, okay, you know what, we need to address what just happened. Nobody did that.
Yeah, it happens so quickly.
It moved too quickly. Oftentimes it moves too quickly, especially when you're in a group.
It's an emotional cocktail that's being poured by a bartender, right? And the drink just changes its composition so quickly. And when you said don't do that, and whether that's from you or someone else, I attribute that to a hard to hear message. It's similar to like, you're not listening to me, or you're just like your father, right? But that message itself, it throws people off 100%, right? Because it's just at the surface, and it's not about the dishes, it's not about the garbage. It's much more deeper than that. So when I realize I'm doing this, I'm not helping the situation, because I'm not sure if that person is able to read between the lines. Don't do this. What does that actually mean?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
And I got to be in a space of like having compassion. If I were to receive that, I'd be like, hey, there's much more than meets the eye here. If not, I'll be thrown in to be like, what do you mean don't do this? Like, I would take offense to it. Right. And then over time, I work on building my vocabulary of expressing what I want, what I truly want, rather than like very high level causing someone to become defensive, right? So we're not taught this, Joy, right? We're not taught this at all. The people that taught me were my guardians, my parents. So I learned from them, right? I learned from my teachers in grade school. We're not taught this. So no wonder it perpetuates, right?
I mean, the obvious thing in a situation like that is you take it offline. Right? So I've been considering how to do it, taking it offline, and having the conversation, and I have no idea. And to some extent, I was hoping, or am hoping, that the other person would be like, well, she told me not to do this. Maybe I should have the conversation with her to say, well, I obviously hurt you in some way. What did I do? I'm sorry. But neither one of us are owning it. And it's difficult. It takes two adults to do it, because just like we were talking about war, this is exactly how war starts. Somebody has some sort of a transgression. It may seem transparent to the other person. So the other person never feels like, I didn't do anything wrong. So, and if the person who feels that they've been transgressed or disrespected goes to the other person, they make it worse, and it just keeps on snowballing and snowballing and snowballing until it's way out of control. And if, like you said, if we all owned our own little space and emotions and realized everybody deserves respect and compassion. If I upset someone, and if I'm doing it intentionally, bad me. If I upset someone and I'm doing it unintentionally, I need to have the conversation with somebody. What's wrong? Are you okay? What happened that day?
Yeah. Communication, language is the first weapon drawn in the conflict, but it can also be the first olive branch, right? Like that's it. And that's the work I do with men. Also with my partner Summer, we have a course that we go through this, provide a space, an experiential space to help people build the language, the communication tools, and the practice to create a space for compassion and understanding to develop. So we take elements from Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication. You mentioned again, communication starts wars because we've been trained to use violent language. You did this, you did that is immediately violent language, right? What happens? That person becomes defensive and then the battle begins. So nonviolent communication is really to be able to open up the space of communicating my feelings and what I'm needing in the moment, right? Though it's hard because it's a whole new language you got to learn, right? Just like learning Spanish or Chinese, it's like, wow, it's a shift. But once I get practice to it, it becomes easy. Though, if I'm triggered, and trigger is a trigger of a gun, that's a violent language, isn't it? So we learn to like reframe that to saying, okay, that person to trigger, there's a mirror here. There's a mirror here for me to look at. But if I'm charged, what do I do now? So this is where we take the work of Shirzad means positive intelligence. This helps identify my survival programs. We call them my saboteurs. They get fired up, right? So let's say, Joy, you have a controller in you, right? And it's coming out. That's going to feel my saboteurs of judging myself, and my people pleaser saboteur comes out to please you, right? It's that relational dynamic, right? So I catch that. So then I then can do what we call a PQ rep, like even rubbing my two fingers together so intently that I feel the crevice of my fingertips. And I do that for 10 seconds, simply. It's a grounding exercise. Either I use it through my hearing, my taste, or my sight. So it gets me into my body. A breathing exercise works well. Just breathing into my body calms me down. Then I'm not in as if in a reactive state. So then I can then respond. I can have space for myself to respond then that place of communicating for my feelings and needs. So we combine both those works to create this course. It's called Connection Through Conscious Communication. It's so critical because like for me, I want to be in conscious relationships. By being conscious is for me to be aware of me and what I'm putting out there too. Because if we're two boats tied together, where am I going? Am I going straight, left, right, doing things by myself and not communicating with this other person? Or is this person going and I'm not doing anything and we're stuck going around in circles? Right? So life is relationships. We got to know how to communicate, but not communicate the way we did before. We got to be conscious about it because we're unlearning. That's why we have to be conscious about our communication, because the communication that we've been taught is violent.
Well, we have been taught to protect ourselves, protect each other, to not be bullied, right? But we're not necessarily taught not to bully. Mm. We are a competitive. Humans are competitive by nature, I think, because naturally, a male needs a female to make the baby, and it's hardwired to procreate. So just out of the gates, there's some amount hardwired to be there first for some unknown reason.
Well,
for unknown
survival.
reason.
It's survival.
Survival.
Right?
And it's like,
if we're surviving.
Not necessarily my survival, but the species' survival.
Yeah. So if we're all in survival, then yeah, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a dog-eat-dog world. We're going to step in each other. We're going to use each other, right? Just as we use our technology, right? So out of that is our thriving. And we have that capacity as human beings, right? So if we're taught to not bully or taught to not be bad, there's still a focus on being a bully and bad. Like if I say, don't think of a color purple, what's going to happen? I'm going to think of a color purple. That's how the mind works, right? The subconscious mind. It doesn't deal
Right.
with negatives. So it's just like the war on terror or the war on drugs. The more emphasis that I put on drugs or terror, the more of that is going to get procreated. So why not like look at how to be compassionate human beings? Why not looking to learn how to listen, right? We're taught not to. It's like it's punishment, right? It's
Right.
still
Like,
body
don't
language.
interrupt.
It's
Right. We're
control.
taught not to interrupt, but we're not taught to really how to listen.
Yeah,
We're told to be quiet.
yeah,
That's the definition of listen, but that's not the definition of listen.
right. So really, we're taught to not have a voice, right? We're taught to be obedient. Really, is the language, right? So then this is what's happening: is that we're in survival mode. We're taught to not address our feelings and needs. So we're running around, right? Really taking from each other and abusing each other. That's what's happening. The wake up call is why we're having this conversation, to wake us up to like, okay, you're telling me, Andre, I need to pay the bills, I need to put food at home. How can I thrive? Right? That's $1 million question, right? And it first starts, I say, in the mind. That freedom starts with the mental mind, mental freedom. It's hard. Yes, it is. But I got to
Yeah.
look at here of like, why am why am I thinking this way? What are my thoughts? Going back to the inner conflict. Because if I can just come from a place of gratitude, just having gratitude that I exist, I have what I need already that I'll be provided for, then it helps shift me more into that space of like being less in conflict with myself. Then my external circumstances will change. Because if I'm always fighting inside, I say what's in my internal world is going to be reflected out in my external world. It's not as simple, but I am certain that it first starts from here. What's going on between these 6 inches? Instead of, oh, you got to have this, you got to have that, you got to have this, right? Oh, the next book, oh, the next diet, oh, this next program, right?
Mm.
It never stops because it's
It never.
outside. It's outside. The next relationship, the next woman, the next job, the next boss, employer. But wait a minute. If I haven't dealt with how I work with people, am I not going to carry that same thing to my next relationships at work?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not going to change. I mean,
No, and that's very difficult. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm personally saying, I've said this to myself a half a dozen times. I'm going to deal with this situation differently the next time, and
mm,
this situation comes, and I deal with it the same way
mm,
because I can't stop myself from being in the moment. I can't pull back, and I say, well, I have to let them know how I feel, or some excuse, something hits me, and I'm in the moment again, and I'm
mm,
not pulling back. Or what's worse, I pull back and I don't say anything, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't the right answer either.
mm,
I didn't address it either way. I either ignored it, I tried to step out of it as if it wasn't happening, or I entered it fully and I became, like engaged in some sort of a sword match.
mm. How did I end up here, right? So like, hey, I've been
Here.
here before. Deja vu, right? It's those
I
patterns.
mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it happens. It must have happened, I'd say, at least 5 times today,
Wow.
where I'll be dealing with somebody by email, and I'm emailing them, and the conversation is not the point is not getting across, and I'm thinking to myself,
Mm,
what an idiot, and I'm thinking, all
mm,
right, calm down, relax. And then 5 minutes later, something else happens. I mean, it literally just keeps happening over and over and over. And sometimes I say, are you recognizing what's happening here? What's
mm.
happening? Got a lot on your plate and you're just rolling from one thing to the next. Right. Okay. So maybe it's time to do what? I don't know. I really don't know. I instinctively will stop or go, literally,
Mm.
either one. So I'm going to stop. I'm not going to react to this one, or I'm reacting to this one. But
Right.
that neither answer is correct.
Right, right. It's like the avoidance, right? Or the posture,
Mm-hmm.
right? The fight,
Mm-hmm.
or just lay back. And either way, doesn't resolve it, right? And I call these strategies. I have strategies for myself growing up in a household where conflict wasn't dealt with. It was really avoided until one person exploded. And then just yelling matches, things being thrown, right? And like, whoa, chaotic. So I learned to people please my parents, just walk around eggshells or just avoid the situation. And I would carry that into my relationships with my girlfriends, my ex-girlfriends, or at work, right? Everything bleeds because Joy, you just highlighted, I can't help myself. I just find myself. It's because these are tapes that are running, right? And if we're like old enough, VHS tapes or DVD players that are playing this track, whenever I'm in this scenario, this happens. So the first step is being aware, oh my God, I'm here again. I'm catching it, right? Then I can start changing it because I can, okay, you know what? I'm not going to respond to this email. I've done that before. I've received an email. I'm like, but I'm like, don't send it. Just take a break and walk away. And I start getting clearer. So that's where the positive intelligence program that, you know, Summer's my partner, we guide people through to catch a hold of these saboteur tapes that are playing in the background because they're highly charged. And by shining the light of awareness like a snowman, the light will cause it to melt. And then we build a new neural pathway by every time we catch it, we just do a PQ rep, like a breathing exercise. We know the thoughts, the feelings, the energetic feelings, sensations in our bodies. When that happens, when the judge takes over, breathe. Then look at, we call it the sage perspective. How can this situation I'm in be turned into a gift? What can I learn from this? What skills do I need to strengthen? How is this going to inspire me to action? So I just view it differently. I'm like, oh, thank you for this challenge. But it's hard to view it when I'm charged, right? Of the saboteurs taking over my mind. That's my survival brain going back to being in survival, like reactive, fight or flight. I got to get myself out of it first before anything. Then from a calm place, I can tap into my sage wisdom and then use those tools. And one, nonviolent communication. Because if I'm talking to this person at work, okay, and we're just like, we're not getting each other, or my boss. When I communicate from a place of feelings, I am feeling irritated because my need for respect. When this happens, I feel this because I'm needing respect. And I was hoping if you'd be open to and in making requests. In all that language, I'm just expressing myself. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not blaming. I'm not saying you did this to me. It gives them an opportunity, the gift to fill my needs, the gift of giving, right? And I have to be clear that it's a request, not a demand. Because if I tell my son, go clean your room, right? My tone, how I say it, or if I say politely, son, can you clean your room? He's going to test me and be like, no. And if I go back and say, well, if you're not going to do it, you're grounded. Well, that was a demand, wasn't it? But if I say, okay, and walk away, or, okay, just wanted to clarify, like, why is that? Or what do you need? What do you need in this moment? Right? That's the next level. Then he may react differently because he's like, oh okay, interesting. Because he's waiting for me to hammer it down, right? So it's so critical that these parts that we put together to allow people to start practicing, so they're building that muscle because it's a brand new muscle. It's a brand new way of communicating, and the most challenging part is catching myself when I'm down the old rabbit hole, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I'm replaying that in my head, and I'm thinking to myself, possibly at the moment that I felt the disrespect, instead of saying, no, don't do that, I should have said, I should have taken a deep breath and said, okay, well, hold on, everybody. Wait a minute. Let's think about what just happened. Something like that.
Yes.
In other words, stop the moment, stop it, literally stop it. Stop it from playing on. Because I can't tell if anyone else caught the moment. If anyone didn't catch one side, it caught the other, caught both sides, felt completely uncomfortable. I had no idea what happened to anyone else. All I know is I felt disrespect.
Mm.
I said, don't do that. And I thought at the moment, oh, that was a brave thing to say, because I didn't, I expressed myself, and I'm thinking afterwards, I'm like, yeah, no, that wasn't a great thing to say. And it was react, and made probably, as I said, you stop the moment, but instead of saying, hold on, everyone, you know, um, whatever. If I had stopped the moment, hold on, everyone, no one would have felt, oh, well, everyone would have been like, oh, what just happened? As opposed to, what's wrong with her? Or
Maybe that's a
I
judgment,
can't
right?
believe she said that to her. It stops it from being that, and everybody's like, okay, hold on. All right, where are we holding? What are we doing? And if I said, perhaps, if I said, hold on, everyone, and everybody was like, okay. And then I said, what just happened?
Hmm.
Then everybody would think. And if nobody caught it, I would say, I felt disrespected. And leave it at that, have that conversation. So they could see that, oh, well, I didn't see it. I did see it. I didn't, whatever it was. It's an odd moment, but now I take responsibility for whatever I perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And that somebody might say, well, I didn't feel anybody disrespected you, or I didn't disrespect you. I would say, yeah, but I felt you did. It was your expression,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
literally, you take it out of, I don't know if, I'm literally working through it in my head right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult when you're in a moment like that. It's very difficult when you're in a moment. And, you could be having the conversation. I mean, I don't know how many times couples have conversations where they literally go down the rabbit hole, and it's like, I've got a headache and I'm in a bad mood, and it turns into what you said last night and you said last week, and remember,
Yes.
it's like, wait a minute, I have a headache. That's why we're having this conversation. And suddenly we're talking about what I said 5 months ago, because it never was addressed, or it's
Never was
constantly being
addressed,
addressed,
right? It's a silent
or
killer.
constantly being addressed,
It's this
or
bag of
constantly being
rocks.
addressed. Yeah, the thing is, how many times have people had the interaction where, oh, here we go again, is in the back of their head, or they say it out loud, here we go again,
Right.
because it is the same.
Mm.
It either isn't ever addressed, or it's constantly addressed, and nobody's owning it.
Mm. Yeah. That's why it's never about the dishes, right? It's everything that's tied down below. And the more I sweep it under the rug, the more what happens in that relationship is more tense it gets. The more the resentment builds, the less intimacy that happens, the more we can push each other buttons. Doesn't it seem to be the case, even with a coworker? If it's not addressed, even the slightest thing that they would do would cause me to, right, be riled up, is because it was never addressed. And that's why conflict needs to be addressed. And the sooner, the better. So it's about how quickly can we get back from a state of disconnection to connection. That's really it, right? And it's got to have the tools, because we're not taught this. So we got to have been taught the tools, the language to be able to get it. And I love how you stopped yourself. You're thinking in your head of, like, instead of saying, don't do this, you're like, wait, let's take a break here. And that's a great start, right? And saying, I feel disrespected. Great start, right? No pointing fingers, and you're expressing yourself, because don't do this was your way of expressing yourself. And I honor that, because you're acknowledging yourself, right? Though unfortunately, people take that the wrong way. So the next level is to enhance it, right? So it's just a process of improving this new way of communicating so that we can just meet each other's needs. That's it. And needs are really boiling down. Marshall Rosenberg calls it your life-serving energy. And needs like safety, respect, appreciation, connection, love, even security, shelter, food, water, air. If our needs are met as human beings, we would have the energy to serve and support others. That's it. It just that I've noticed in my experience, the feelings. There's positive feelings and there's negative feelings. And there's nothing negative about negative feelings. It's just on the negative side of a battery. That's all. There's nothing bad or good.
It's,
Yeah,
it's good or bad. Doesn't mean that bad is bad. It just
correct.
means not good.
Yeah, even anger, right, serves a purpose, right? Like it's all about seeing it as my internal GPS to show me, am I in alignment of my needs or out of alignment? If I'm feeling excited, exuberant, right? That I'm in alignment of my needs. My needs are being met. Or I'm angry, irritated, disconnected, sad. I'm out of alignment of my needs in the moment. Simple. But that requires some training around and awareness first around of that, right? That vocabulary. Because Joy, I'm sure the most common question people ask you is, how are you? Right? And most people say, I'm good. I'm fine. And those aren't feelings, actually. They're not. Because we're not taught a vocabulary of feelings. We're not taught to know how to express ourselves, right? Like, be quiet. Like, when I grew up, I couldn't cry. Crying was not good. Even coughing or sneezing was not good. Like, I was told to just be quiet, listen to your parents. So, what happens? Disconnected from here and just here. And then become a robot, right? An emotional robot. But how does that work out, right? In relationships, it doesn't work out.
Well, it doesn't even, it doesn't really even work out for us being alone. It does break us and cause everyone to be an island, because if we can't deal with other people, we hold everything. We become an island. And then that means we have to take care of everything ourselves.
Mm.
And what we're not taught is, again, life is unfair. At that point, we're taking care of everything ourselves. We're still not necessarily recognizing life is unfair. And when it becomes unfair, we do need to deal with that in some way, shape, and form. We can't let it destroy ourselves. Either way, we can't let it pull ourselves so far back or push ourselves so far forward that it's an extreme of either. We need to make it fair for ourselves. And that's, as I said, that's a lot. It's a lot of work individually. And it is all our own responsibilities to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone's going to take it in equal measure. So, in a world where we all think that we're responsible for ourselves, is it ever going to be the situation where we still think, well, you know what, I'm doing more work than they are. They're not doing all the work. They're not doing all the good work. I'm doing all the work. It's always that case. It's always that case. And sometimes it may be true because we're human and we're fallible, and sometimes we have good days and bad days. So maybe we're having a particularly weak day for whatever reason. We may not feel well. We may not want to do something because of some reason or another. We may be, we may be putting off something that we know we have to do. We may be going through any amount of things, because even if we do 75% of the good work, we're still human. And that 25% is something that's a work in process. Always. Or work in progress. Is it work in process? In other words, we're always becoming. We're always becoming, because I don't think that we can be exposed to every single cause and effect. So while we may have a mechanism that puts us in that loop that we react a certain way to make, that's what we do. We may not have been exposed to everything. Like, have you ever jumped out of an airplane? No, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to freak out. I know I'm going to freak out, but I don't know what I'm going to do. Have I ever been, stopped under knife point? No, I'll
Mm.
freak out again. I don't know what it was. It's different than jumping out of an airplane, but it's just the same adrenaline rush. But one is, different than the other. It's life and death, but it's different life and death. So, and that's simple as, am I driving my bike and does a car almost hit me
Mm.
type of a thing? All of these things are things that may or may not ever happen to anybody. They're
Mm.
life and death to some extent. And that's the 25% we never know of. We don't know that's going to happen. So
Yeah.
we're always becoming.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to like, being
I mean,
kind,
we may have.
right? Being kind to myself, having compassion for this journey that I'm on. Then I can have compassion for others, right? It's okay. It's a process of becoming, like you said, it's a process of becoming to learn how to be a better communicator, how to handle conflict better. Because if I know better, I'll do better. And it just starts with the awareness and taking responsibility. Number one, going back to that, can I take responsibility? That's it, right? If I can do my part, okay, then I can leave it up to that person to do their part and we can meet in the middle, right? And then we can get somewhere. And there's some people that are a lost cause, and it's okay, right? I can't force them, right? If they don't want to change, right? But I'm gonna do my part, and I'm gonna connect with people that are, and I'll continue to practice and get better. So if conflict runs your life, and you're like you had enough of it, and it's causing like sleepless nights and irritation and everything, like emotionally, mental, physical, it affects everything because it's like this silent killer that I carry around as a bag of rocks. And that's that going back to that resistance I have with you. Let's say we are in a conflict, Joy. There's a resistance. We can feel it, right? It tastes bitter. Then it turns into resentment because it hardens and calluses. And then I start taking revenge on you because I'm starting becoming more passive aggressive. I'm short with you. I start jabbing, giving you these like you don't listen. Like what? What does that mean? Like throwaway comments, right? That there's something
Mm-hmm,
more, and I have to go digging. But this is what happened, and this is the source of conflict and war in the entire world.
mm-hmm.
Resistance, resentment, revenge. Go round and
And
round.
so, and sometimes, like you said, someone else isn't going to do the work, and you're going to need to do that work, right? So sometimes you need to just.
Mm,
Sometimes it's difficult. That's a bitter pill. But sometimes you need to be able to say, no amount of conversation I'm going to have with this person is going to solve the problem. It's going to always go off because this person doesn't want to do the work, doesn't want to recognize whatever it is. Whatever it is. They're not better. I'm not better. They're not worse. I'm not worse. This is a no-win situation, and I need to be ever more compassionate for that person.
yeah. hmm I have
And
to
that's
accept them as they are. Like it goes back to like loving unconditionally. And a friend of ours, Gary Merck, he's got a great quote about love. It's letting others voluntarily evolve. That's it. I gotta accept them where they're at and be let go of expectations, right? Let go of control. I can only control what I can do. It's actually about me and my perceptions and what can I change about it,
right.
right? I use
Exactly.
my parents as a great example because I had so much resentment growing up. I was short with them. I had an attitude with them. I didn't want to share about my life with them, right? And no wonder they reacted in a way that confirmed what I thought. They were short with me too. They were kind of irritated, right? Because it's how my tone, how I said things, how my body language was around them. But then when I shifted it to gratitude, being grateful for what they've given me, the energy of an interaction changed completely. So that's what I can do is change what I'm giving out. And then I can actually watch the change happen. If I'm just kind to someone on the street, anyone, someone's in my face, yeah, it's hard if someone feels like they're threatening. But if I just look them in the eyes and be like, hey, what's happening? And actually they feel it like a dog can feel fear. And if I'm just compassionate, it changes the interaction, doesn't it?
Mhm. No, it does. It does.
Yeah.
So, do you have a one? This is going to be a tough question. One single tip that you can give someone um, to start their journey of change.
Mm.
What or change that they perceive is they're in need of a change.
Yeah. Ask for support. Look for someone that you can trust to be that confidant, be that sounding board, right? If someone is in a dark place, seek professional help, right? If someone's just looking for a change in their life, be around people that you want to admire those same qualities. Because I truly believe if I were to journal, that's great, creating the awareness. Doing it in isolation is fine, but doing it with others is way better, way better. Whether that be getting a coach, connecting with a good friend that is aware, that takes responsibility, or taking a personal development course that's experiential, right? It's just finding the right environments because the work environment can be toxic for some, right? It may not be the right place to start with, or even at home with the family. It's a very tough spot when it pulls me back around. So I got to look for influences outside of my maybe normal circle, whether that be on LinkedIn or social media that you resonate with, and just drop a message. Have a conversation around it. Because I know for me, my superpower is when I talk out loud with someone that can hold space, be at soundboard like yourself, Joy, then I can connect the dots in my head. I can gain greater awareness. And I can also get that support and accountability too. Because if I'm around, let's say, people that are responsible, then I want to be responsible, right?
Right.
If I'm around victims, I'm going to be a victim.
Right.
So that's the
Yeah.
first thing is looking at the environment.
So it's I've said to a number of people that something that is most important is to continuously reach out to new people
Yeah.
once a week, and begin that. It helps you learn, listen. Also, it allows you to perhaps make a few mistakes and learn from those mistakes, or listen to somebody and get a different perception of the same thing that you're experiencing, and they show you yet a different shade, color, smell, a whole different perception of the same thing.
Right.
So, I've said that, but one of the most important things is to reach out to, like you said, responsible people.
Yeah.
Because if you want to smoke cigarettes, if you want to quit smoking cigarettes, you're not going to go to somebody who smokes and say, "I need to quit." They're going to be like, "Well, I have a cigarette. Let's talk." So it's not helpful, right? You need to go and be with someone that has quit, or never smoked, or obviously is a substance abuse specialist. Do
Got a
you
friend
hear the
there.
dog?
Yes, I do. Joining in the
She
conversation.
agrees. She agrees. I don't
Yeah,
know what I said, but she agrees.
I love it. Yeah. Hmm.
So, where can people find you on the web, or what's your last words to folks out there?
Well, where people can find me, if you're watching us on LinkedIn, Andre Lam, Instagram, Andre_Lam, as well as Facebook as well. And my website is achievingliberty.com. So www.achievingliberty.com. My last words is let's do it together. That's it. We can't do it alone. It's a myth. It doesn't work. You can't do life alone. That's survival of trying to do everything by myself. It's time to ask for help. It's time to get the support. And that's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage. Courage to take that act, to be vulnerable, and to really acknowledge your limitations where you're at so you can get the help you need. Because we all need help. I'm great at things that you're great at, or may not be great at, but you may be great at things that I'm not great at, right? So we complement each other. We're meant to do life together. So find a community. I'm going to leave that. Find a community, a like-minded community. Yeah.
There you go. I am thankful that you were here today to speak.
I'm grateful. Thank you
And
so much for the opportunity. Yes.
and I'll be looking forward to hearing what else you have to say on the great big internet, or what they call it. The Some people call it the interweb.
The interweb. Okay. Okay. Some people
And
call
I'm
it
like,
like
the
the
interweb. That's
metaverse.
interesting. The metaverse.
Yeah.
Ooh, the metaverse. Thanks, Andre.
Yeah. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.